Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Tom Ratcliffe from the central team at NEACO, normally based at the University of Cambridge, but today I'm at home in Bury St Edmunds. Thank you all for being here to find out a bit more about the grant scheme that has relaunched now for its third and final phase in the current version of NEACO. So in this session, we're going to talk about the NEACO grant scheme and its purpose, tips and common questions with regards to completing the application, some examples of successful pass bids, and then we'll just have a bit of space for question and answers at the end as well. So I'll dive straight in now after letting one more person in. Hi Vicky, I think you're just in time. I've just done the introduction. So question. Also, sorry, someone seems to have their microphone still on. If you wouldn't mind just double checking. What is the NEACO grant scheme? At its most basic, it's an opportunity for funding for our target schools and sixth form colleges to bid for projects of between £1,500 and £4,000 value to deliver between now and the 26th of March 2021. You can bid multiple times to say and divvy that money up how you wish. So you could do two £2,000 applications, a 1,500 and a 2,500, one 4,000. It's up to you how you go about that. The only thing is that schools and sixth forms can receive in total through the grant scheme £4,000. Why are we providing the funding? Well, we want to give you the opportunity to deliver your own innovative approaches to support our target audience to make informed decisions about their future, particularly with regards to progression to higher education, and to be able to learn and embed change around your IAG provision in your school or sixth form. And these grants, they can be a self-contained project, for example, delivering 3 activities by a certain date if there's a particular service or solution that you know out there you've seen and kind of fits the bill for what you're seeking, or they can be more exploratory, such as seeking to trial or investigate something and learn from that to then use that experience in future, or see if what you had in mind turned out to be true. But what do we mean when we say a NEACO-aligned project? Well, firstly, as just seen on the previous page, it aligns to our mission. So that's about making our target audience in particular able to make better informed decisions about their future and progression to higher education. It's aligned to our offer as NEACO, so progressive activities, a series of interventions that can raise target pupils' either understanding and preparedness or passion and ambition for higher education pathways. So that's quite closely aligned to our objectives and framework, objectives of the progression framework, but that there is still scope within those 2 strands to be quite ambitious and adventurous, and aligned to our values. So being collaborative, doing our best to kind of work in partnership and draw on multiple sources of expertise, being sustainable, being able to see the outcomes of what you deliver in your project beyond the lifespan of the grant itself, responding to the need of target students or your particular audience. Impartial, so not just focusing on, say, one course or one institution, but providing students the opportunity to think about a range of options and the opportunity to learn. So again, that's learning for NEACO, learning about what makes a difference, but learning for your institution as well. So the purpose of the grant scheme, why are we providing the funding? First, we want to enable and facilitate delivery of an evaluation of innovative activity outside of what we would typically be able to provide as NEACO, say the role of the higher education champions using the progression framework. The grant might give you an opportunity to explore an idea that we haven't thought of, or utilise resources that we don't have access to, such as your contacts, your teaching body, the parents of pupils. It's supporting you yourselves to explore and establish improved techniques and practice in IAG and HE provision, and learn from that for the future. We found that actually schools that deliver grant projects get a better understanding of NEACO and are better able to work with higher education champions because you're delivering your own NEACO project and participating in our evaluation requirements and the gathering of heat data and delivering of multiple activities too. And just on that last point about data, so when it comes to thinking about your activities, it's really, or your grant projects, it's really important to think about a particular series of interventions, particular points where you'd be able to gather data to measure the impact of what you're doing. And again, that could be a series of activities that are happening on a monthly basis or weekly basis or whenever, or particular interventions using a particular platform or tool. But doing so lets us record or lets you record things and then submit them back to NEACO so that we can enter them into our national database for evaluation in the future to see what impact the interventions you designed and are made alongside everything else that we do. And that key data that we ask you to collect is the same that is collected by our higher education champions. So there'll be some activity data about the particular intervention you're doing, and then your students and participants' first name, last name, date of birth, postcode, and your institution. And we ask you to collect that for everybody that participates where it's feasible to do so. So that's if you're in a class of working with a class of 30, you would hope that that's an achievable thing. If it's a really big event that's happening, potentially not so much now in the times that we're in, then we can be flexible as to what is feasible to gather in those moments. So how do you go about applying? I'll say first of all the applications have to be made at our application portal, neaco.smapply.io. That's the same if you've submitted a grant application before as what we had previously, which was Fluid Review. They've just rebranded, and actually the portal's, I think, a bit more user-friendly as well. The other thing is you can start the application and come and go into it as much as you'd like. So you don't have to kind of sit and do it all in one go, or if you leave and the computer closes, you won't lose all your work. But it's highly recommended that when you're doing your application, you use Google Chrome. Other browsers such as Internet Explorer can be a little bit glitchy, but Chrome seems to see it all the way through, and that's what SurveyMonkey themselves recommend. There's 4 stages to the application. The first is contact details, fairly self-explanatory, just letting us know who you are and the details of your school and your finance department, which helps us make sure that we get the money to you in good time. Terms and conditions, unfortunately it's a bit like iTunes, and you have to accept them each time you submit an application, whereas contact details, if you're doing multiple ones, it can carry over between bids. So this is just to confirm that you're aware of and accepting of the criteria that exist in the grant scheme, or if there's a particular issue with why you can't accept something, such as you may have a challenge with gathering all the participant data. That's a place to be able to explain to us why that barrier may exist. The application form. Now, this is the main body of the application. I'll give a little bit more detail on this in a moment, but it exists in kind of three sections. The project details. This is where you tell us the who, what, when, where, and why of your project. It covers the all the information about what it is that you've identified and what you want to deliver and how you're aligning it to NEACO. This is the part where you can kind of tell us what the progressive series of activities is. The audience and delivery details. This is when you tell us who you're targeting and who's going to be responsible for delivering the project. Most likely, most of you or the person applying will be leading the project, but you may have particular venues you're relying on or a particular service provider to. And your funding and requested, and how you're allocating those funds. So if you're requesting £4,000, you can state that, and then you can say we're allocating £400 to transport, £1,000 to the service provider, whatever they may be. And lastly, the higher education champion supporting statement. This is a new feature in the grant programme this year, but this is to help the higher education champions be better informed about applications that are being made and better able to provide support where they're required to or requested to as well. It's very simple to do. You simply send an invitation to your higher education champions, take your place email account. They're then able to log into your application via that, see what you've written so far, and then provide a statement to say, yes, this sounds good, we're supportive, we've been talking about it as well, I'd be happy to see it go ahead. So just to give you a quick overview of the SurveyMonkey Apply Portal, I'm just using screenshots because I didn't want to risk the technical breakdown of trying to exit my presentation and go elsewhere, and just conscious of time as well. So when you first go to SMApply.io, if you've not done it before, you'll create an account, then be able to log in. You'll see there's only one application available. There's some information at the start about how to apply and everything, and a little bit of an overview of the form just to give you a bit of extra detail, which you can choose to read through. And then when you click Start Apply, you'll come into this page. In here, you've got the 3 stages that you need to complete. The contact details and terms and conditions are very, very swift. And then the main body of the application form, and then a supporting statement from the higher education champion. So you can only move on to each one after you've completed the one prior. And then when it comes to adding a higher education champion, you can simply do so here with the Add Collaborator button. And then when you click on that, you get the option to invite somebody with a Take Your Place email account. When you're in the body of the application form itself, so this is what it looks like when you're in the project description. You can see all the questions that you need to respond to are down here. And on the left-hand side, you can go back and forth between the sections and review it at any time, or use these buttons to download it and see what the completed form looks like. Say if you want to send somebody a PDF copy to preview what you've done so far. I think it's a very user-friendly system, much more fluid than the previous version. But if you've got any kind of issues while you're going through it, we're always here to help, and you can just drop us an email at funding@takeyourplace.ac.uk. So I want to spend a little bit more time talking just about the project details, because this is the real heart of the bid, I think, and where it gives us as Nico and as the reviewers a really good idea of what it is that you're working on and what you're trying to achieve. So there's about 5 components to this particular bit. They're not huge, but a little bit of detail I felt would be useful for you guys. So firstly, it's just a name and a headline. Now these are literally that. The name is whatever you want to call your project. It can be as adventurous or as straightforward as you like. And the headline is essentially trying to sum it up in a tweet, about 120, 140 characters. And that helps us as reviewers really kind of grasp it when we're discussing the applications, when we're going through the review process, and just kind of really sum it up in a sentence. This is about 5 activities to support Year 12s in better applications, something like that. Describing the project. This is the body of your this main part, and it's 1,000 to 3,000 characters. This again is the who, the what, the when, the where, the why of the project that you want to deliver. What need have you identified amongst your students? How are you going to tackle it? Who is going to deliver it? And I think in this part, a really important thing to remember is to indicate to us what the series of activities or the progressive activities you're going to deliver are. That really helps us kind of pin down, okay, this sounds brilliant, they've got their audience, they know who they want to work with, but what components are they going to kind of commit to delivering that we can then see as a progressive series of activities. Sometimes that seems to get a little bit lost in the description. And then really clearly stating 1 to 3 objectives and the outcomes by achieving them. So that's just a summary of, we're going to deliver a series of 5 activities on a weekly basis to 30 target Year 12s. The outcome of doing so, they are more confident in working on their higher education applications and aware of their skills and abilities, and things in that vein. Tell us about any risks and the contingencies that we put in place. So these can be risks such as health and safety if you're doing something kind of quite adventurous, or risks with regards to attendance, say, and how you're going to make sure that the right audience is aware of the project and gets to take part. And of course, right now, we need to be quite aware of any risks with regard to COVID-19 as well. As it stands, we need to look quite closely at that. We won't be able to fund anything that, say, is seen to kind of raise the risk of transmission, or doesn't adhere to the latest guidance that's available on the government website with regards to how schools should operate when it comes to COVID-19. And lastly, it's about aligning the project to Nico's values. Now, you saw them earlier, there's 5. You don't have to align your projects to every single value. If you can meet, say, a couple of Nico's values really strongly, and it's just kind of, maybe it's not the collaborative project, but it's kind of going to be really sustainable, allow you to learn loads of things, and that's fine. I'd say the projects that tend to do better though and turn out to be better bids do take the time to really think about how they can align to and add value to Nico's values as well. And just to reassure you, I don't know if 1,000 or 3,000 characters sounds a huge amount. On the left of the screen here, you can see what 1,000 characters looks like, and on the right is 3,000. Sometimes people are very concise, other people like to be quite descriptive, but we felt that was the right amount to kind of allow for both. There's no kind of right or wrong in between that, whatever you're happy with. So once you've gone through the application process, what happens? Well, when the higher education champion has received their invite and they've added their statement, and you're both happy with it and are ready to submit, if you submit by the deadline on the left, it's a soft deadline. Nothing happens if you don't miss that date. It just rolls into the next phase. We'll aim to get the decision to you by the date on the right. So when the application comes through to Nico, it's screened very quickly to make sure it's complete and meets our criteria, and that it there's no kind of details or typos missing that might be particularly problematic, like say the finance person's email address. That's a very quick check. If there's anything minor, we can fix that with you very quickly. Assigned to one member of the central team and one county coordinator from your county for review and scoring. Applications that score a combined total of over 50% can be put forward for discussion at a monthly meeting between the county coordinators and central team, and we allocate funding based on the available budget in that phase. So we want to fund as many as we can, but if there's a limited amount of funding, they will be ranked, and it might still be that even a high scoring bid might not be as successful as others that score higher. But whatever we're able to do, we want to make as many as we can successful, and we then agree the final ranked list with our project manager, Jenny O'Hare, and that's then we're able to then communicate the outcome. Should your bid score below 50% or be rejected at any stage, we'll provide it back to you as quickly as possible with feedback as to what the issue was and suggestions for how you could resubmit. And then you've got the option to resubmit if you'd like. So should you have a successful application, and we very much hope you do, what happens next? You'll receive an email from central team just to say congratulations. It'll have some key documents attached with relating to delivery of your grant, and just respond within 10 working days to that to confirm you want to go ahead, or maybe let us know that things have changed and you're not able to. Providing we hear back from you, we want to take it forward. We'll book an initiation call with you to discuss any feedback from the grant, any quick queries, and the actual delivery process. There's a handbook to go through. We'll talk through about data gathering and the particular instances when you may or may not need to. And then after you've had that call and you kind of confirmed you're ready to go, you can submit your first invoice for 50% of the funds. The project's now yours and your team's to get underway. So during the project, record your activities and participant details, use our participant questionnaires where possible, and keep us updated if any issues or changes occur. We're very happy, we completely understand, especially in these current times, that things can change. And if that's the case, we can work with you to find a way to redirect the project and just make sure that it stays on track for all of us. Also book in a specific and dedicated midpoint checking call just to check in and see how it's going. And if anything is going off track, we can again discuss it, or it might be that things are going really, really well and we can talk about it and celebrate it with you. And then at the end of the project, when you've completed your whole scheme of work, you submit to us your data, the participant activities, completed questionnaires are posted to us, and you complete an end of project review form within the grant portal itself. We'll give those a review, come back to you with any questions, double check things, maybe want to turn it into a case study, and then once we've got all the criteria sorted out, submit your second invoice and the project is complete. So just to cover common questions and tips with regards to the applications themselves. When it comes to target pupil numbers, we have to kind of go similar to what our higher education champions aim for, which is about 2/3, stretching to 50% normally of target pupils from our target wards, years 9 to 13 in our postcode area. If you're a school with low target audience numbers, appreciate that can make things harder. What we would say there is you aim to kind of invest in a more high degree of support for target pupils. That's one option. Or if you're looking to do something that still includes a high proportion of non-target pupils, try and find a way to make sure that target pupils get some additional benefit from it, maybe additional time with a service provider or the first interactions with a piece of equipment, just to make sure that they're not lost in the crowd and we can be certain that they're benefiting from that provision. Investing in training or equipment is fine. Again, if you're investing in training for your staff, please try and ensure that there's the capacity for the target students to benefit from that training first. And if it's equipment, the same, that when it's installed in the school, perhaps there's a club that's set up or special lessons so that target pupils can kind of try it and kind of get that interaction with it. We welcome joint applications if you want to combine your bid with another school, say to create an £8,000 bid. That's something we're welcome to. No one's done it yet, so you could be the first. But what would need to happen is that you would both submit your own bids and then indicate within the application that you're submitting them in partnership, so that you both receive funding and you both return the data and information for your school and your students. Delivery after the 26th of March. We can't fund projects that would begin or have a key kind of core central component after the 26th of March, unfortunately. What we can say, however, is if you were, say, investing in training and that qualification takes a little bit longer to achieve than beyond the deadline, providing the majority can take place before our final grant deadline, you can still and you can utilise that with target students. Then it doesn't matter too much that maybe the training itself finishes after the time. And providing funding up front, we really prefer to provide a 50-50 funding model. If for some reason that's a huge problem, we can look to be flexible on that. So just get in touch with us at funding at Take Your Place and we'll see what we can do. In terms of application tips, firstly, I'd say take your time and make it clear. There's a surprising number of grant projects that come in where they can either be a great idea that just isn't clear enough for us to be certain or confident about what is really going on. I think in particular it's about if applicants kind of forget within their description to actually say this is what we will do, but making it clear and just trying to avoid too many kind of errors as well. I don't think we'll be the kind of spell check police about things, but if an application feels rushed, it can make us feel a little bit less confident about how thought through it is and how ready the idea is to kind of be put into practice. And the last thing we want to do is create more problems later on by funding an application that actually maybe wasn't quite ready to go. Align it with NEACO. So we have quite occasionally get projects that are brilliant, but they're just really far removed from actually what NEACO is about. We're still there to support progression and inform decision making around higher education. We can support bids and fund bids where they're about mental well-being or skills development or have a kind of secondary objective alongside NEACO. But what I would say there is to make sure that they are connected to higher education. For example, if it's about mental well-being and stress reduction, it's the impact on the student's overall kind of ability to study, to succeed in higher education, in their current education, and be better equipped and well prepared to progress. If it's solely around kind of stress reduction as a self-contained issue, it just becomes a bit too far removed from our project. So really kind of make sure that the progression is in there. Consider your higher education champions offer. Occasionally we actually get bids that are kind of duplicating what a higher education champion could provide, or very similar to work that they're already doing, and that's just better handled locally and probably allows the HEC to provide that capacity rather than you having to take it on. Reach our audience with the right team. So again, really try and make sure that you're engaging the target audience. We're perfectly happy to see the whole school population benefit, and we want things to be sustainable and the legacy to continue, but make sure that target pupils are kind of at the forefront of your work, and that if you're doing something that is involving maybe slightly specialised knowledge, such as mental health or well-being, that there's someone included in the team who we can feel confident has that knowledge to kind of get that particular message right. And lastly, check your figures. Just make sure that you're you don't have to have kind of gone through every figure with a fine-tooth comb or got quotes for everything in advance, but sometimes a budget can be allocated in funny ways, and that can again just cause us to pause, and it's either going to delay your application's decision while we double check, or if the figures seem quite far off, we might have to reject it and ask you to revise, and we just want to be able to provide the funding to you as quickly as possible, really. So there's just a couple more slides from me, and then I will be able to take your questions. So just lastly, there are a few things that unfortunately we can't fund. One is funding existing provision or costs solely to participate in existing higher education activity. So if you already have a service and you're applying for us to kind of take over the funding of that service with NEAco grant funding, we can't do that, unfortunately. Or say if pupils are attending, or would be in normal times attending, a open day, and you're looking for funding to cover participating in that, just the bus to do so, that's not really what the grant scheme is for, and that might be better suited to talking to your higher education champion locally about. We also can't fund curriculum delivery or resources such as science textbooks or purely attainment raising activity. We can't fund trips abroad, which I don't feel will be much of a concern in the current climate. But again, we have to be really careful about COVID-19 particularly as well, and make sure that we're all adhering to the most up-to-date guidance from the government. We can't fund salary costs for recruitment to new roles, but we can fund current teacher kind of additional time, say if you are putting on an after-school club and there's some cost involved in that, that's okay to bid for. If you want to kind of incentivize participation or do some kind of competition, that's great, but if you want to include a prize, the maximum value for everything of that would be £100, and we can't do bursaries, and unfortunately we can't provide funding for digital divide resources. That has to go through the Department of Education scheme that has been made available recently. So lastly, successful past bids. So I wanted to kind of cover 4 examples here, but what I just wanted to say before I do so is that these are just ideas and examples. Don't take these as kind of must-haves to stick to these. It's really about you telling us what you need and what's kind of interest, but these might just give you a bit of a steer as to what's been successful before. So an example of a provider project that was good and was funded previously was one that was to do with production training. This school funded a local theatre company to come and provide a professional performance so that younger year groups could hear from them about performance roles and all those that are involved behind the stage as well, and the pathways and routes to reach them. And they trained, the production company trained the older year groups on how to use professional stage equipment to give a bit of a taste of production careers, and then the older year groups were then able to train the younger year groups as they came through the school to be able to keep using that equipment and kind of do a little bit of mentoring themselves and passing on what they'd learned. I'd say in particular with providers, if you are looking to utilise a service provider, that's fine, but again, make sure they're part of a progressive series of interactions. We do want to avoid kind of one-off activities, the firework events, where it's very engaging in one instance and then that impact dissipates quite quickly. So if you're looking to use a provider, either make sure they're able to provide a series of interventions, or if they're a one-off, maybe try to make sure that they're able to provide something to you or target students that allows you to get that kind of extra interaction to embed the experience. A CPD project that was about training staff in school that was successful previously was an Oracy for All one. And that was based on research into Oracy's impact on progression to competitive institutions. And the school invested in training and resources for staff to be able to improve target pupils' Oracy and confidence, so that could then benefit their confidence in interviews, in personal statements and application writing. And the resources again and the training had a legacy to impact the school and pupils for some years to come. An equipment project that was successful last year was Experience in Design. That was a joint funded bid where the school got funding externally as well, and NEACO was able to collaborate there to provide them with a laser cutter for the design faculty, and that allowed them to provide new experiences around design, new kinds of lessons, and expose and raise target pupils' aspirations for engineering and manufacturing pathways, which they did in particular to make sure the students got the benefit through a dedicated extracurricular club. And lastly, an exploratory project was Inspirational Cafe. I wanted to touch on this one because this probably didn't go as well as the school had hoped, but the important thing about the application was that this was something where they were trying something new. They were pushing the boat out. They had a good idea. They'd explained very well what they wanted to do, which was to set up a parent-orientated cafe in the community where target parents could come and engage with the school in a less formal way, access employment support such as guest speakers and CV workshops, but also hear about their child's progression options and decisions on the way, and hopefully be a bit more kind of engaged and aware of what the options were. Unfortunately, it didn't go as expected. I don't think the parents engaged in quite the way the school wanted, but they had a good idea. They were trialing it, and they got to learn as much by trying to deliver it, even though it didn't go well, as any of the other kind of more straightforward bits where they were delivering a kind of very set series of activities. So that is everything from me, and I'm conscious I've run over a little bit, so I hope appreciate everybody kind of still being here as far as I can tell. So the first question that has come is from Kerry, just saying, will this video be available to share with our staff afterwards? Yes, it will. So we'll make the recording slides available as quickly as we can. So if you have any questions that you'd like to raise, feel free either just to type them into the chat box or to turn on your camera and ask away. While I give you a moment to think about that, I'll just recap a couple of questions that were raised yesterday. My pleasure, Kerry. One was just to double check on targeting. I think we had somebody who wasn't as familiar with NEACO. So NEACO works with specific students in years 9 to 13 in target wards across East Anglia. You can find and these are wards where progression to higher education is low and lower than you would expect based on the GCSE level attainment. You can find a postcode tool on our website and a map on our website to see where these wards are, but the postcode tool will let you, if you have a particular section of your year groups in mind, you can double check their postcodes and see if they are actually in target wards. Thank you, Helen, my pleasure. Screening within school. Somebody asked yesterday how are we presenting this to everybody? Within your school or sixth form, we're trusting you and your faculty to determine how you want to utilise this funding and where you want to place it. There is just a kind of tick box within the form to say I confirm that my senior leadership team and principal or head teacher are aware of and supportive of this bid. But ultimately, if you want to focus I can provide you some more at a later stage, Kerry. I'll see what I can do. Kerry's just asked if there's any more examples of successful bids to share with staff. Yeah, so yes. So, and sorry, Robin. So yeah, just to pick up on that, it's up to you as an institution to determine about if you want to tailor towards a specific subject or try and be broad and come up with an offer for the school as a whole. I think in those previous examples, obviously the laser cutter bid was very focused on a kind of STEM angle, whereas the Oracy for All bid was really about quite a broad offer to improve everyone's kind of confidence and ability in speaking and presenting. So it's yours to determine, and we trust that when the applications come in, the school is happy with the direction that the funding is being pointed in. Would platforms such as Unifrog be considered? Yep, that's fine. I think, again, if you're considering a digital platform, what we would really recommend doing is putting in, again, a series of specific idea of we're going to use Unifrog with target pupils in these ways to do these activities, this progressive series, in amongst the usage and benefit that the whole school will get. And Angela, repeat the percentage of target students we need to include for our bids. So ideally 66%, 2/3 or 50. But if that's a challenge or a real problem, talk to your higher education champion about it, or your county coordinator, or ourselves at funding@takeyourplace.ac.uk, and we'll see how we can help. But the most important thing is to find a way that target pupils get the benefit of the experience, and again, are not lost in a crowd if you're dealing with or thinking about a particularly big project. Lastly, there was one question yesterday about and has cropped up about multiple applications. So again, you can make multiple applications. You can submit one 4,000 bid, it gets funded, happy days, that's the scheme done. Or you could submit a 1,500 and a 2,500. That's fine too. You can really hedge your bets, and you could submit 8 £2,000 bids. That might become tricky for us because we then may not know quite which it is to fund. You'd be competing against yourself as much as anything else. That's where actually communicating about the bid and making sure that everybody in the school is aware of where it's going is worthwhile. But there's no limit to the number of applications you can make. Even if you make a bid and it's rejected, and you want to resubmit that idea with changes, that's fine. Or if you want to submit a completely different bid, that's fine. That's entirely your call and your capacity. I think that's covered every question. Would you consider an Operating Theatre Live subscription? So Kerry, I think that again comes back to providers where the Operating Theatre Live, as far as I'm aware, is quite a one-off event. But if you can work with them as a provider to make sure that is part of either a series of interventions that you as a school coordinate and they feature us, or they as a provider are able to do something additional for you, such as provide you with CPD, provide a bit of extra capacity or time for target pupils, then it's a more viable thing. What we try to avoid is just a kind of solo experience that doesn't have a introduction or a resolution to it, as it were, beyond the experience of the day. I hope that makes sense there for you, Kerry. Great, thank you. So I think that about covers all the questions. I'm very happy to take any more, but if not, and I appreciate I've run slightly over the time that I suggested of half an hour, I'm happy to close the session there. So all I will say is thank you all very much for your time. We'll make the slides and the webinar recording available as soon as we can. If not today, it'll be very early next week. All the guidance that you've been able to find today is available, or hear about today is available at takeyourplace.ac.uk/funding. And we're very happy to take questions or have a chat about your ideas as well. Drop us an email at funding@takeyourplace.ac.uk as well.